Welcome to the Nutrition Table. This is an ambitious strength podcast built to kick down nutrition barriers for everyday humans, such as knowledge, time, and money. We aim to kick nutrition myths to the curb and help people understand how they can eat better, to feel better, perform better, and be better. All right, first let's talk about pasta and what is it. Now, nowadays there's all kinds of different diets. You have, the gluten-free diet. So now there's pasta that's gluten-free, made of, chickpeas or other various substances. But what is pasta? Pasta is typically a wheat flour, some water, and eggs. The eggs helps to keep the flour and water together, the fats in there. However, pasta isn't a significant source of fat intake. Okay, mostly carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, especially from that eggs and that flour, but mainly a carbohydrate source. Because it is made of unleavened dough and flour, water, and eggs, there's not a whole lot of micronutrients in pasta. Some pastas are enriched and fortified, but most pastas offer very minimal micronutrients, which is why vegetables and fruits are so important, because those colorful foods offer that wide array of micronutrients. And when we talk about macronutrients, we're talking about proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Micronutrients are everything else: magnesium, sodium, all of your salts, manganese, which is a big one that you get from pasta. And I decided to do a little research because I just like to ask these questions to assure that we're covering all bases. Manganese, what is it? What does it do in the body? And are there typical deficiencies from manganese? Do we consume other foods that typically have a lot of manganese? The truth is manganese deficiencies are rare, so eliminating pasta out of your diet isn't necessarily a bad thing if that's something you're looking to do. You're not going to be manganese deficient. So like those who are gluten-free, as long as you're getting a good wide array of vegetables, you're going to intake enough manganese so that you're not going to have any sort of deficiency. So there's really no threat to eliminating pasta out of the diet. We can say that. Other food sources are like leafy greens, some nuts, I think like cashews and walnuts maybe. Chickpeas too. So if you do eat a chickpea pasta, you might actually get that. Pasta also has a lower glycemic index than red potatoes, white potatoes, or yellow potatoes, and rice. And I will go way deeper into glycemic index and what all of that means in a bit. All right, glycemic index, and what is it? It's basically a spectrum from 0 to 100 that some people have come up with in order to rate how basically the relative speed at which your body breaks down the carbohydrate, the specific carbohydrate in the food that you're getting. So carbohydrates are all sugars. There's glucose, there's fructose, and all of those things. So you get a wide variety of carbohydrates and different types of carbohydrates, right? You also get starches from potatoes. So it's how fast or how slow the body breaks those starches and carbs down into singular molecules of glucose, which is then taken in by our cells inside of our body and used as energy or stored, recreated into a chain of glucose molecules called glycogen, which is stored for later use. So glycemic index is how fast or how slow our body breaks down that certain type of carbohydrate. Now, an increased rate of breakdown is going to mean an increased level of blood glucose. An increased level of blood glucose is going to rise our insulin levels. if we keep chronically risen insulin levels, so let's say I eat white rice, which is one of those higher glycemic index. If I eat a lot of white rice all day consistently, I'm going to continue to keep pushing that glucose level, right? Those chronic increased levels are going to force chronic increased levels of insulin, creating some sort of resistance eventually. Eventually, my body, that feedback is going to say, okay, too much insulin, let's not pump anymore. And eventually, I'm not going to be able to get that response that I want when I need it later on down the road. Like after I train and I do want a lot of glucose intake, I want high blood sugar levels because I've just trained and I want to replenish those glycogen stores that I've just depleted from a performance athlete, from a powerlifting perspective. Where things lie on the glycemic index is, it's kind of a toss-up, right? There's some like gaps and ranges you can lie within, I guess, but a lot of different factors can affect the actual glycemic index or the glycemic load that is caused by what you consume. The ripeness, the cooking method can change things. The more you break things down, so the further you cook things, the easier it is to absorb it, right? Because we're already pre-breaking things down. When we talk about digestion in the body, there's mechanical and there's chemical. So we're going to break things down and then we're going to absorb it. You chew so that you can break it down so that there's more surface area to volume ratio so that you can absorb more nutrients, which is why it's good to chew for a long time. You're already setting yourself up for success for absorption and for that chemical absorption, i.e., absorbing glucose molecules via insulin. So pasta lies somewhere right in the middle of this glycemic index. It actually is lower than bread, it's lower than potatoes, and it's lower than rice. Now, what I want to talk about is all the benefits of potentially eating high glycemic index foods and eating lower glycemic index foods. And I'll get to that in a moment. So pasta's in the middle. What will shift pasta towards the lower end of that glycemic index is consuming whole grain pastas. It's just going to slow that process down because whole grain pastas aren't separated. It's a whole wheat germ. You need to spend more time mechanically breaking it down before we can start to absorb these things. So that slows digestion and slows the amount of glucose that's being sent into your bloodstream, therefore decreasing your insulin levels. And again, over a long period of time, if we sustain this, those insulin levels start to get lower and lower because we're recalling on them less and less. We don't have that constant spike pushing for insulin, insulin, insulin because our blood glucose is high. So there's a reason why bodybuilders eat a lot of white rice, because it's fast to absorb. You see them consume it around their training. So I'm not always one to push timing with food, but here's where timing might be important. If you're someone who doesn't necessarily want to eat white rice, but you have, pasta, or you're trying to put on and absorb nutrients, put on mass and absorb nutrients, and you just don't want to give up pasta. I mean, hey, screw it, whatever. You want to eat pasta. Regular pasta is going to help you absorb more nutrients and more glucose. Therefore, if you worked a little bit harder, or if you're powerlifting and you need to replenish those stores, you had a little bit of a harder lower body day, consuming pasta might not be a bad idea. It actually is going to help you replenish those glycogen stores a little bit faster. That spike in glucose and insulin might not be such a bad thing. Again, it's over a sustained long period of time where this starts to become an issue. So if you're eating pasta by itself for every meal, where it's only carbohydrates, and you are only consuming foods in the middle of that glycemic index, yeah, it's probably going to be bad for you. A, because you're not getting any other micronutrients. B, because protein and fiber satiate you, make you feel fuller, so you will spend more time between meals, essentially. You eat a bowl of pasta by itself, it's not going to hold you over very long. You're going to want another bowl of pasta later. You take a bowl of pasta and you put 6 ounces of chicken in there, scramble up some or saute up some spinach and some vegetables and toss that in there. You have a nice, well-rounded meal. You're not too worried about the pasta with that middle of the road glycemic index because you have the protein and you have the fiber that's also going to slow that digestion down a little bit. So we try to pick and pair these things so that one thing doesn't become the devil. You can work in other things in order to make this work. It's not always a bad thing. It's all about moderation and kind of how we pair these things together, where we put them in, and the big puzzle, big picture idea of things. Where does it fit in the puzzle? Another point on bodybuilders eating white rice is that it digests faster. Now, they also consume this with protein, so it does slow a little bit. But it digests faster, meaning that they can consume another meal sooner. So someone who's trying to put on mass, this might be beneficial. Now, you're going to want phases where they're not going to eat as much carbohydrate so that they don't create this insulin resistance, because over long periods of time, regardless of what your body looks like, you can create insulin resistance based on what you're eating. So, ebbs and flows. We need to work with this and utilize the end goal to let us know whether or not this fits in. And really, it's all about looking at the bigger picture and seeing where each of these things fit in. Does pasta fit in? Sure, it can fit in if you throw protein in there. Even if you're diabetic, you can eat pasta. You just need to be aware of these things. Be aware of what you're pairing it with. Be aware of how your body answers to it. Be aware of what else you're consuming around that time, or even during that day or week. Key takeaways. No, pasta is not bad in moderation. I would say it's not even worth eliminating out of your diet as long as you use good timing and moderation as constraints. You'll be fine. Serving size is important if health implications exist. Therefore, if you do have diabetes and there is insulin resistance somewhere, somehow, consuming or moderating how much you consume is going to be important. Because first of all, if you consume too much, note that, consume less the next time. Find where your threshold is and be a scientist. Everything in moderation. Serving size is important, especially in health implications. What you eat it with is also very important. If you pair it with a protein and high fiber veggies, you're going to slow down the digestion and your metabolism, and therefore the glycemic index of pasta is almost negligent, and you shouldn't worry about it as long as you're not gluten-free and you can handle it. What's up, everyone? Did you find this information helpful? Subscribe to this page for updates. I'll be dropping a short video weekly on how to navigate the abundance of nutrition information out there. Follow me on Instagram at ambitious_strength_. Sign up for The Table. This is my ambitious nutrition group and inner circle that covers recipes, how to eat affordably, kicks myths to the curb, and talks about getting results while still staying healthy and living life.